Yo, guys, welcome back to another video. This is actually another video from Lost in the Pond, or another reaction from Lost in the Pond. Been doing a lot of these recently, but I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I do enjoy the videos, and this is kind of a different sort of topic-ish to what he usually does. He usually does like sort of, I don't know, I say usually, the ones that I've seen are like stuff to do with like cultural things, like, or just things that you see in certain countries and differences, like homes or bedrooms or like kitchens or whatever. And yeah, this one is just how different are British and American counties. This was suggested recently through my comments. I think it's a very, very new video. It's like been like 2 weeks since it was posted. But I used to think it's sort of the comparison between counties in the UK and states in the US was a similar comparison. How wrong I was, because then I found out that also there are counties within states and yeah, all that kind of stuff. But I still don't really know the difference. So it is actually a video that I think could be a lot more interesting than I'm initially thinking. Again, it's an interesting topic, but I don't really know what sort of differences there are going to be, but I'm sure we'll find out. And yeah, if you haven't already, check his channel out. He deserves more subs. His videos are very fun to watch, and you seem to be enjoying the reactions. So again, if you haven't subscribed to him already, links are in the description. But let's get into this one. Quick shout out to my Instagram and my Twitter, links in the description for those interested in wanting to follow those. Same for my Patreon, links all there for those interested, but let's just get into it.
Hello, I'm Lawrence, and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to counties. Having lived, worked and consumed bad whiskey in both countries, I also bear the legendary distinction of having lived in 7 different counties, 3 in Britain and 4 in the US. So you could say that I'm more primed than most to reveal the gripping truth about these riveting, if procedural, regions. And the central truth is that British and American counties are very, very different. Residents in Gloucester County, New Jersey would hardly recognise Gloucestershire, England, but mostly because it was invaded by sheep. And so, without further ado, here are 5 ways that British and American counties are very different. In Britain, defining a county is complicated. In general,
let me just turn off a little. I don't know why the sound's so quiet.
counties are subnational divisions used for demarcating between administrative, geographical and political regions. In my home country of England, there are 48 ceremonial counties, that is,
Oh, shit. Shout out the Norfolk Dons, bro. This is where I am. Suffolk, Essex. This is Essex, right? I don't even know counties here, man. These are some of the Midlands. I don't know.
That is, counties to which Lord Lieutenant, as in personal representatives of the Queen, are appointed. And yes, I know the whole of British life sounds made up. But then you also have the 39 historic counties, counties that were established by the time of the 11th century Norman conquest. These largely overlap with the ceremonial counties, and it's all highly confusing, and just reading about it makes me want to take up drinking again. In short, the counties of England are used for a variety of purposes. In non-metropolitan counties, local services are provided by county councils and often district councils. So for example, it's the county council who comes and takes away your rubbish every, 4 years. In metropolitan areas such as Greater Manchester, services are provided by district councils. And what does that mean? I don't know. In the United States, a county is an administrative or political subdivision normally consisting of some level of governance. The various powers afforded to counties do vary by state, and to list them all would take until the 41st century. Basically, depending on where you live, counties might provide services such as courts, public utilities, libraries, hospitals, public health, parks, roads, and law enforcement. And on that last point, there's one commonality among US counties that surprisingly wasn't just a made-up movie trope or a figment of my imagination, and it's this. Most of them have actual sheriffs. In fact, one of the first things I noticed after starting my new life...
What actually is a sheriff? Is it like someone in the police force who's at like the highest point? Like, what actually is a sheriff? I'm thinking about it.
In the US was the abundance of yard signs bearing words like "Vote J.W. Pepper for County Sheriff," J.W.
wow.
Pepper, he gets things done. Now this might sound odd coming from a person whose own country once appointed Professor Snape as the Sheriff of Nottingham, but these days the role of sheriff is a largely ceremonial affair in Britain. It's such a rarely discussed aspect of British life that it likely comes as a surprise to most Brits that the country even has sheriffs. All
Yeah.
that aside though, the
Didn't even
United
know.
States, made up of 50 states, has considerably more counties than Britain. Actually, so do some states, which is where we get into
That's
shape
mental.
and size.
There are some states that have more counties than England. That's mad. That is absolutely insane.
On a map,
Shapes.
the first thing you notice about British counties is that they all look completely different and jarringly similar at the same time. And if you stare at them long enough, you start to see stuff. Like for instance, Norfolk looks
Oi, shout out.
like a not fully rendered fish, where Sussex resembles a chilled out Highland cow, and Northamptonshire looks like a bad interpretation of what a child thinks a sheep is. On the other hand, when I moved to Indiana all those years ago, I was struck by how rectangular everything was. Indeed, this included the state itself if it was painted by Salvador Dali, and the same is true of many of its counties. While Britain doesn't believe in straight borders, Indiana can't get enough of them. And it's not just the Hoosier state. As outlined in a previous video, the United States is absolutely obsessed with rectangles, from those in its flag to those in its land. And let's all take a moment to appreciate the sheer majesty of Kansas, which looks almost exactly like a
What the fuck?
patchwork duvet. Now, admittedly, not all states fit this bill. While the Texas Panhandle is
What the
primed to hold the world's largest game of tic-tac-toe, irregular shapes do make up much of the US county map. However, unlike in
That's
Britain,
so
the vast
strange.
majority of these, including a county in the state of Missouri that's shaped kind of like the state of Missouri, often have at least one straight boundary. Either way, British and American counties come in all shapes, not to mention these.
Sizes. I'm
You know
interested
the
to see
drill.
these.
I'm Lawrence and I definitely don't have a size complex. That said, I can hardly compare British and American counties without discussing land area. The counties of Britain have evolved over the years, but these days the largest is often believed to be the behemoth that is North Yorkshire. But that isn't technically true, because even though it measures in at
Yorkshire.
3,341 square miles and is certainly the largest county in England, there's an even larger subdivision in Scotland. The Highland
The
Council
Highlands
area,
are.
home to
My
all-
nan lives like somewhere around here. I might be going there on holiday on summer as well. I didn't know the Highlands was considered a county though. That's huge. But the funniest thing is, I feel like maybe not even 1 million people live here because of how like remote it is and like how like many mountains and things there are right up at this point.
almost 250,000 people, is about 10
250,000 people. Wait,
and is certainly the largest county in England.
250,000
There's an even
people.
larger subdivision in Scotland. The Highland Council area, home to almost 250,000 people, is
There
about
you go.
10,000 square miles in area. Now, the main reason this only made it in on a technicality is that Scotland no longer has counties, but many of its council areas continue to operate via the names and functions of when it did. Unusually, despite boasting more than 3,000 counties of its own, the contiguous United States, whose states tend toward having tight clusters of smaller counties, can't compete with Britain size-wise. The only exception to this is San Bernardino County in California, which is twice the size of the Highland Council area and also 4 times bigger than Northern Ireland. However, once you leave the lower 48, the US starts to produce counties that put even bigger nations to shame. In fact, in Alaska, there are 2 that not only outsize the UK's biggest counties, but the UK itself. The smallest of
that is ridiculous, bro.
these is the North Slope Borough, which is a tiny fraction larger than the Great Lakes, which are a tiny fraction larger than the UK. And then there's the Yukon Kuyook Census Area. How do you say that? The Yukon Kuyook Census Area, which is considerably larger than the UK, and it even makes a mockery of this fact by cheekily featuring the letters UK in its name 3 times. It's worth noting, however, that the
I love that. Just to flex us a little bit more, you got UK in the name
is
3
the
times.
least densely populated county equivalent in the US, housing just 5,000 people. And I say county equivalent because, like Scotland, Alaska doesn't refer to its administrative regions as counties, but as something else entirely, which brings us on to this.
Boroughs.
For the
Oh,
most-
so there's a lot of boroughs. How do you even say it? Boroughs. There's a lot of boroughs in like London, for example. Like I feel like I think there's like what 40 something, maybe more than that. but I feel like they're only in like sort of major cities. So maybe there's someone like Manchester. I don't know. Like I guess because New York's obviously got like Manhattan, and you've got like I can't even think of the other names, the Bronx, all those kinds of ones. But they're not boroughs, are they? They're just like, oh, what's the word? I can't think of the word. Fuck, I can't think
This
of the
part,
word.
it's true that both countries refer to first-order subdivisions as counties, but as with all matters of language, there are exceptions. Famously, most English counties are known colloquially as shires, a tradition maintained for hundreds of years by hobbits, but also textbooks. A shire county is one that is not metropolitan and usually ends predictably in the suffix shire. And Americans, I know what you're thinking, wouldn't it be really quaint if the United States had shire counties? It did. In 1634, King Charles I of England ordered a restructuring of local governance in the Virginia colony, leading to the development of 8 shires. They were English, they were here to stay, and they were soon rebranded as counties, but most of these do still exist. Meanwhile, as I alluded to earlier, Scotland, which has its own historic shires, has ceased referring to its first-order subdivisions as counties, but rather council areas. Back across the pond, 48 of the 50 states use the term county, which means there are 2 exceptions. Firstly, Alaska is organised into boroughs and census areas. Now, I say organised, but a big chunk of the state is actually wrapped up in something called, and I'm not making this up, the unorganised borough. This region is made up of subsections not contained within the state's 19 organised boroughs and is not itself a borough, and yes, I'm just as lost as you. Meanwhile, influenced by its colonial French and Spanish past, Louisiana is made up of 64 unassuming county equivalents known as parishes. Though funnily enough, one of these is actually named Assumption.
Parishes.
And speaking of county names,
I love these little facts. One of them is called an assumption, mate. It's
that
called
is made up of
assumption.
64
Wait, let me see
unassuming
this.
county equivalents known as parishes. Though funnily
It literally is called.
enough, one of these is actually named Assumption.
Fuck's
And speaking
sake.
of county names,
Just
let's
spat everywhere.
finish with this.
Ow.
As we've already established, the majority of British counties carry the shire suffix. Many of those counties were established at different times during the last 1,000 years or so and are usually named for their county town. However, let's not forget that there are multiple big players that have never carried the shire suffix because they were named long before the whole craze took off. These include the likes of Essex and Sussex, both formerly Anglo-Saxon kingdoms from the 6th century. And then you also have the likes of Devon, Dorset and Somerset that previously carried the shire suffix but no longer do.
Oh, man.
Meanwhile, over in the United States, it can sometimes feel like I'm living in an alternate universe. While no shires remain, 4 counties, Berkshire, Massachusetts, Cheshire, New Hampshire, Hampshire, West Virginia and Hampshire, Massachusetts, were all named after shire counties in England. However, unlike their namesakes, each is succeeded by the word county. Nonetheless, this list should tell you 2 things. Number 1, the East Coast has a lot of British-inspired county names, and number 2, in America there appears to be no rule stating that the same county name can't be used again in another state. Both observations can be adequately summed up by the existence of Essex County. All 5 of them. And if you think that's a lot, let me know if you live in Lincoln County, because the United States has 24 of those.
What the Is this after the president, or is it after Lincoln, like the city in, or the, is it the city in the UK? Or is it just because the US loves the name? I'm guessing it's after the president, right? It must be. That is insane. That is absolutely crazy.
And surprisingly, not all of these were named after
Oh, well, there you
Honest
go.
Abe. A handful drew inspiration from the seemingly unrelated general Benjamin Lincoln, while Lincoln County, Maine was named for the English city.
Oh,
What's more,
there you
Lincoln
go.
County is only the 5th most common county name in the United States. Unsurprisingly, the number 1 spot belongs to another president, a certain George Washington. In all, if you live in the United States, there's a 62% chance that you live in a state with a Washington County. And that's because there are 31 Washington counties. In general, the US specializes in counties that were named after prominent people, particularly presidents and founding fathers, but
Yeah, Leo, I mean, it actually does help sort of, what's the word? It sort of keeps the memory of the people who helped build your country in a sense. Like, it keeps their, not influence, but it keeps, I guess it is kind of influence, it keeps their history there, what helped make the country what it is. So I can actually sort of see it, but 31, that is nuts. That is crazy.
Also cities, states, native tribes, and even crops and resources. And on a personal note, I'll leave you now with the crucial knowledge that the US boasts 11 Lawrence counties, 9 Brown counties, and 4 states that have both. I've lived
I'm gonna search.
in 2 of those states.
It is lifting them. In the States. I'm gonna search Peters County, USA. USA. There better be a Peters County. There's not a Peters County, is there? There is not a Peters County. Fuck it, you know what? Let's do my first name. Thurston County. This is not going to be anything there, but... No way. Oh my days. Washington State is living... Oh shit. There's a Thurston County, but there's not a Peters County. Wait, what? The fuck? Bro, this... I've got to go to this county. I've got to go here. What the fuck? What the Thurston County is a county located in the US state of Washington, and as of the 2010 census, its population was 252,000. So it's actually quite a highly populated county as well. The county seat and the largest city is Olympia. This city sounds familiar. That's kind of cool, you know. Thurston County, I was not expecting that to be a thing. Comparing anything to Indiana makes you the most legit YouTuber out there. Rural Indiana gives a real taste of America. The majority of YouTubers don't understand. This is why I say subscribe to your channel. You're the only international YouTuber who truly understands us. England seems like they enjoy making things as complicated as possible. Yup. Any other musician surprised to hear the name J.W. Pepper outside the context of buying sheet music? That's like comparing aubergine and eggplants. Indiana can't get enough of rectangles. Shire comes from an old English skir, pronounced shear, which means division. The UK is so confusing, man. As a Minnesotan, I chuckled because we have all county names listed. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this one again. This is a very fun one. For the people who suggested this, wait, has it actually ended?
I'm Lawrence Brown. Don't forget.
Yeah, it's just shouting out all his socials, etc. Which, for those interested, links all there for his. But yeah, another banger of a video. Thank you for the people who suggested this. I was seeing suggestions only like in the last few days, but it kind of piqued my interest. And yeah, another banger of a video. But get suggesting from what I can't talk. Suggest down below what you want to see in future. More from Lost in the Pond. More from Lawrence Lost in the Pond. More other reactions or like other sort of specific content video. I don't know what I'm saying. Other styles of content, just whatever you want me to see. I'll look at the suggestions and I'll be sure to react to in the future. But hopefully enjoy them until next time. Like, subscribe.